everyone, Lou here. You know, lately I've been in a real bookworm mood. I've been slowly reading Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte on my weekends, and it's kind of got me thinking about manga that were adapting books. That's why today we're taking a look at manga based off books. No real disclaimers this time around. I think this is pretty much straightforward anyway, so let's jump right in. Pride and Prejudice. My favorite romance novel of all time. The tale of two very stubborn people learning to open up and fall in love with each other. It's a tale as old as time. And I still cry like a bitch from Mr. Darcy's love confession at the end whenever I watch the 2005 film. The manga was written by Stacey E. King and artwork was done by Potse, releasing on February 18th, 2020, just short of missing that perfect Valentine's Day release, but oh well. As for how well it did, I honestly have no idea, but usually manga like this never does financially well by comparison, so who the hell knows. Now, I was lucky enough to find this manga at my local bookstore while I was purchasing some manga, so I decided to read through it a bit. As far as I got into the manga itself, I will say that it's pretty dramatic for an adaptation, but that, I mean, the expressions and reactions are a lot more dramatic compared to the book and films, but this does feel like an early 2000s shoujo, so maybe that was the point. I did notice a few minor details from the book were missing, but I don't really deem them important enough to deduct any accuracy points for omitting. Now, as for designs, I can't help but be reminded of the 2005 movie. Like, you can't sit here and tell me Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy were clearly modeled after Keira Knightley and Matthew Macfadyen, who played both of them respectively. Unless I'm crazy, which is probably true, who knows? Overall, if you're a lover of Jane Austen's work like I am, and want to enjoy this in a brand new perspective, I highly recommend this manga. Frankenstein. One of the first horror stories ever written, and one of my favorites. The tale of a mad scientist thinking he can play God by making a creature out of corpses, only to realize his horrific mistake and deal with the fact that this monster is now on a quest for revenge for making him live a miserable life in the first place. The manga adaptation was made by legendary horror manga author Junji Ito in January 1999. Now, I did talk about it a few years ago when I encountered it at my local bookstore as part of a collection of short stories by Junji Ito. I had originally thought it was super accurate telling the story, but obviously it's been a few years, so I had the time to actually sit down and read the whole story. While it was extremely accurate, there were also massive changes to the story that were definitely borrowed from film adaptations more than the actual story. Particularly the Bride of Frankenstein's monster that was such a heavy part of the story of Frankenstein later on in pop culture. In the original book, Victor never actually finished making the female version of the monster. He was so scared as to whether or not the monsters would have active reproductive organs and able to make monster children that he was so horrified by the idea of the monster creating offspring to haunt him further that he quit the idea. Which is why the monster flies into a rage and kills Elizabeth as revenge. In the manga version, he does successfully make the female monster with the help of his friend Henry. The female monster immediately anguishes over her existence and the monster has to kill her. Then, anguishing why she didn't love him and vowing revenge where he kills Elizabeth, I guess it's kind of the same outcome, but I prefer the book version where he never actually made her at all and the monster wants to kill Elizabeth so he can rob Victor of a wife too. Henry also doesn't help Victor in the book with creating the female monster and has no idea about the monster at all. From a narrative standpoint, he's basically the complete opposite of Victor to show how low and maddening Victor actually is by having his best buddy be a literal ray of sunshine who is also murdered by the monster. Speaking of the monster, I love Junji Ito's interpretation of the monster. I don't know if it's because Junji Ito's work in the first place, but to me the most horrifying art depictions is uncanny and elongated human bodies. So seeing this uncanny and unnaturally disproportionate monster is just really fucking creepy, especially when its eyes were all crusty and clearly some kind of pus. So yeah, this monster wins in the horror factor, that's for sure. I said in my original video that it wasn't accurate because Victor describes the monster as looking very beautiful. To be honest, the way it's described, he just sounds like handsome Squidward from that one SpongeBob episode. But now looking back, I think this was Victor being an unreliable narrator because he was blinded by adrenaline and a fascination for his own creation that he saw him as beautiful. Which, like, considering I read Frankenstein when I was 12, took me fucking long enough, I guess. This is Junji Ito we're talking about. He is a master at telling a tale filled with suspense and dread. If you want a mostly accurate adaptation with fantastic artwork, please read Junji Ito's version of Frankenstein. It's fucking awesome. The Clique. Now, for those of you who were not 10 to 13 years old in specifically 2008, The Clique was basically Mean Girls for 10-year-olds. It was about 5 super rich 12-year-olds and their basic preteen drama they went to that also really didn't age well at all. Like, one of the characters has an eating disorder and it was portrayed as a funny gag the entire time. So that's an insight as to where we were on mental health in the early and mid 2000s, which was not cute at all. Anyway, the manga was released in 2010, about 2 years after the film For the Clique was out, and a year after the final book released, which was a prequel. Not entirely sure who the hell this was meant to capitalize to, since the series was definitely over, but hey, that's pretty much the question brought up throughout this entire video, isn't it? The artwork was done by Yushan Lee, who does gorgeous artwork for comics, by the way, so I highly recommend you guys look up her work. She also wrote some how to draw manga books that look pretty cool. Now, unfortunately, I was only able to read the first couple of pages because this book was out of print for a long time now, and most sites didn't look like they had it in stock in the first place and forgot to tick it was out of stock. So I didn't feel safe enough trying to buy an obscure as fuck manga like this from some questionable websites. I will say that it's pretty accurate, albeit I will say that Massey comes across more like an actual dramatic shoujo teenager instead of a super mega ultra bitch. Like, I know she's only 13, so it makes kind of sense she'd be kind of an asshole because every kid is kind of an asshole at some point, but wow, was she a major ass in this story. I do like the artwork though, the artwork is really nice. Anne of Green Gables. Of course I have to include my favorite here. If you're new to the channel, or me in general, Anne of Green Gables is my favorite book of all time. Something about the tale of a quirky Canadian girl sharing her beautiful view on life and growing up is a story I've never gotten tired of reading at since I read the book in high school. As for adaptations, I'm surprised to see there's so many. There's currently about 3 adaptations of The Orphan from Avonlea. That's pretty surprising. One from 1977, 1997, and 2020. Today we'll be taking a look at the 1997 adaptation. Why? Because the artwork is absolutely beautiful. The details about this manga are a little lost to time, so I can't give specific details, but it released in 1997 with artwork done by Igarashi Yumiko. She's actually done other adaptations of classic books such as Heidi, The Wizard of Oz, Romeo and Juliet, and Madame Bovary. I have never seen a manga manage to capture a story so well. It's not only very accurate, but I can tell how much everything is drawn with Igarashi Yumiko that she must have been a very big fan of Anne of Green Gables. I mean, not as much as I am, but still. If you ever want to see a pure romantic cottagecore 90s shoujo with beautiful artwork all over it, please read this manga for all that's good in this world. Good gosh, I would pay big bucks for colored artwork of practically every panel because it's just so pretty. I genuinely can't recommend this manga enough. Please check it out if you haven't. Igarashi Yumiko also adapted some of the sequels to Anne of Green Gables, which is surprising since almost nobody adapts the sequel, so that's a thing. Also, unpopular opinion, but outside of the 80s live-action miniseries, Japan is the only country that's been able to tell Anne of Green Gables right, just saying. Ending it off with my favorite book of all time sounds like a pretty good way to end this video, doesn't it? So thank you everyone for watching. If you have any recommendations for manga based off books, or have thoughts on this video, then as always, let me know down below. And again, if you really liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it around. Hey guys, thanks for watching! If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you're new. If any of you would like to help support my channel in any possible way, my Ko-fi page is down below in the description, along with all of my social media. For any subscribers, new or old, who'd like to help with video ideas, or maybe just want to talk about anime or something, I have a fan server linked down below. See you next time!